We are used, aren't we, to the sort of detestation of the press. We are used to that. But the swipe at the government, that was a new one, Rachel.
Yeah, so he said democracy fails if the press does not hold the government to account and instead chooses to get into bed with them. And basically,
And rock bottom.
And he said they're both at rock bottom. I think really his argument is about like reform and press regulation and sort of anger and confusion as to why, even though the phone hacking claims came out years ago, press regulation hasn't been top priority for any government. It's not looking likely to be. The thing that really astounded me, because I was following the live blog of this, like, I don't think he's going to win. And I almost don't think... No, I don't think he's going to win, because there are so many examples where, like, the lawyer was said, like, there were other ways that they could have got this story. And even if it was phone hacking, you can't prove which paper did it. And you can't prove that there wasn't somebody in his life who leaked details. And actually, there were a couple of examples where it looked like that is what had happened. But... I mean, I don't remember it the first time around. I was too young. But some of the stories that were being run, like injuries that he got in school sporting matches, or did he have a fight with his girlfriend, or where was he going to go? Where did he go for his 16th birthday party? We're talking about a teenager who had just lost his mother. And it's very easy when we talk about this to look at it in the context of what's happened since the Oprah interview, the memoir, the Netflix thing, and all of the questionable choices that he's made, and Meghan Markle and how controversial she is. But if you look at what was happening at the time, this was a teenager, and the entire British press establishment basically seemed to think it was okay to stalk him and to publish stories that maybe they got through phone hacking, maybe they got through calling up the medical officers at his school and saying, has he been banned from football? None of this was in the public interest. And I just think, like, if that happened to me as a teenager, or if that happened to a child of mine, that was what they were experiencing, we'd all think that was absolutely horrific. And I think we just now think it's okay because he's behaved really strangely since then.
What do you think?
Well, I think if you step back, this is an extraordinary attack by a royal. He's said that the government of the UK has hit, quote, rock bottom. And the whole point of the British Constitution is that, yes, we have the royal family, but they stay way out of politics. And Harry, in this court case, is tearing up those norms, wading straight in. I imagine because he wants to effect policy change. But the question in front of us is not, are we going to change policy? The question in front of the court is, do you have proof that in these instances you're bringing to us, you were hacked? I wasn't in court today, so all I've read is the press cuttings. It looks like there's lots of holes in those, in that. A lot of the stories emanated from the Press Association, Her Majesty's Press Association, I should stress. It's a real, where there are the strictest rules of the Press Association around what you can run. But parking all that, because none of us are in court, I think what is extraordinary here is that Harry seems to have kind of started a new front line in his war on the British press and indeed the whole British establishment. And it seems that he's further away than ever from coming back into the royal fold.
I think both those things are true, aren't they? I mean the story of Harry and Meghan on one side and the royal establishment on the other, and the media and as you say, large parts of the establishment, that's a well-established story. It's politically polarising in a strange way. It splits the country, maybe not necessarily evenly, but it does. There's a generational divide in the way people whose side they take in this sort of thing, and a political one too. I mean, curiously, we've seen that in our politics on the spectrum, you're more likely to be on the right of the spectrum if you're not a supporter of Harry, and the other way round. Meghan Markle, of course, her history as an American liberal is very well known, and their attitudes reflect that in part. But this comment by Harry today about the British government hitting rock bottom, whether you agree with that or whether you don't, it's just going to deepen that polarising effect, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I everything that I was saying about the headlines and the story they ran about him as a child, none of that sort of negates that. I get the impression that he doesn't necessarily realise how that is going to come across, because it is very personal for him in terms of the damage that it's doing. But he wrote it down,
it wasn't blurted out in the course of cross-examination. He wrote it down in a statement.
But I think it's about his family, fundamentally. And yes, it will do damage to the monarchy or to the idea of the sort of separation between the monarchy and the government. And I think he's past caring, because a real key
He's not
part.
coming back.
He's not coming back. And I think he blames the palace for not protecting him more. And I think a big part of this is, if it turns out that these stories didn't come from phone hacking, they came from palace sources, family members who leaked it, that's something he wants to get out in the open as well. He wants to blow this thing entirely open. And I don't think he particularly cares whether he wins the case or not. I don't think it's about that. I think it's about revenge.
The relentless pursuit of Prince Harry by the British media and establishment paints a grim picture of how a young man, grieving the loss of his mother, was hounded mercilessly. The scars of that treatment have clearly shaped his ongoing battle, not just against the press, but also the very system that allowed such invasions of privacy to go unchecked. On today's episode of Meghan and Harry Tales, we explore Harry's bold stance against these institutions while addressing those who attempt to undermine them. We are all too familiar with the British press's obsession with Harry and Meghan, but what sets Harry apart is his courage to stand up and speak out. Recently, Harry took a swipe, not only at the press, but also at the UK government, accusing them of failing the nation. His words are not just a reflection of his frustration, but a call for change. He criticised the relationship between the government and the press, accusing them of colluding rather than holding each other accountable. This bold statement demonstrates Harry's commitment to justice and reform, even when it comes at great personal cost. At the core of Harry's battle is his demand for press regulation. He questions why, after years of phone hacking scandals, the government has failed to prioritise reform, and he's right to be angry. How is it that institutions tasked with protecting individuals from invasive practices continue to turn a blind eye? Harry's bravery in taking on the establishment is something we should all commend. But let's step back and consider what Harry endured. Imagine being a teenager, already dealing with the trauma of losing your mother, and having every detail of your life splashed across headlines. Injuries at school, fights with girlfriends, birthday plans, all trivial stories that had no place in the public domain. Yet the press treated Harry's private life as fair game. It wasn't journalism, it was exploitation. Harry's lawsuit against the press has revealed more than just unethical practices. It has exposed the systemic failures within the British establishment. In court, Harry's legal team highlighted how stories about him were acquired. Some might argue there isn't enough evidence to prove phone hacking, but the truth is far more insidious. Details about Harry's life didn't appear out of thin air. If these stories weren't obtained through illegal means, then where did they come from? Could it be leaks from within the palace itself? Harry's actions have undoubtedly rocked the monarchy. By accusing the government of hitting rock bottom and exposing the cosy relationship between the press and the establishment, he has shattered the illusion of impartiality within the royal institution. Some critics argue that Harry has crossed a line by stepping into political territory. But isn't it hypocritical to demand silence from a man who has been wronged so profoundly? Harry's fight isn't about politics, it's about justice. The attacks on Harry and Meghan often come from those who are desperate to maintain the status quo. They fear change, and they fear the truth. But Harry's courage in speaking out against these injustices should inspire us all. This isn't just about him or Meghan. It's about creating a system that values integrity over sensationalism. The generational divide in how people perceive Harry and Meghan is telling. Younger generations, who value transparency and fairness, largely support them. Meanwhile, the establishment and its supporters cling to outdated norms. This polarization speaks volumes about the need for reform, not just within the press, but across the institutions that shape public opinion. Harry's case is about more than legal victories or headlines. It's about exposing the toxic culture that has plagued his life and Meghan's. He isn't fighting for himself alone. He's fighting for everyone who's been targeted and silenced by the system. And while the media continues to paint him as controversial or vindictive, the reality is that Harry is standing up for what is right. Let's address the hypocrisy of those who criticize Harry for speaking out. Where were these voices when the press invaded his privacy as a child? Where were they when Meghan was being vilified for simply existing? The double standards are glaring, and it's time to call them out. Harry and Meghan deserve better, and so do all of us who believe in fairness and truth. In conclusion, Harry's fight is a necessary one. He is exposing the dark underbelly of an establishment that has operated unchecked for far too long. And while his journey may be fraught with challenges, it is a battle worth fighting. Harry and Meghan are not just victims of the system, they are warriors for change. This episode of Meghan and Harry Tales is a celebration of their resilience and a condemnation of those who seek to tear them down. Harry and Meghan's fight is our fight too, for justice, fairness, and the truth. Let's stand with them.